Hi, it's Nora again from Threshold to Hope, coming to you from my home art studio, and we're going to do part 2 of painting with primary colors. If you watched the first, you saw me make a color wheel out of my 3 primary colors, and then we painted a couple of backgrounds. And these are the backgrounds that we painted. And we're going to turn those backgrounds into a couple of simple paintings. So if you'll come around behind me, we can look over my shoulder, and I'm going to work on these and show you how to do some really simple paintings. This first one we're going to make into, I'll just sit this up here so you can see what I'm working with. We're going to make this into just a nice simple little scene that's nice and spring. Okay, so we're going to do a nice little spring scene here. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to take some of my blue and my yellow and make my nice green color. Now I want to make my green just a little less bright. So to do that, I can pick up a little bit of the red and bring it over here and kind of mute down that color just a little bit. So I have a round bristle brush here, and I'm going to use the tips of this just to tap on some little bush shapes that will just take all the way across our horizon line. And just make some of them tall, some of them short. Nature is nice and random, so we don't want to have everything looking just the same. Okay, so we have that little bush line back there, and now I want to put some little highlights on my bushes. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of this yellow and just tap in just a few little highlights on the tops of those bushes, so we have a little sunshine in those bushes. And we don't want just little polka dots, we want these to kind of be in bush shapes, so just kind of think about putting them on in the shape of bush. So now we have our little background here, so I'm going to use some of this green color and put in some foreground, some little bushes in the foreground. Again, add a little bit of my yellow for little highlights. And before I put my bushes on the other side, I need to go ahead and put my tree in. Now to make our tree color, our tree trunk, we're going to make up some brown. And green plus red makes a beautiful brown. So I'm going to use a little bit of water on a round brush. I'm going to come in here and pick up some of that brown. And I can throw in some nice little tree shapes. And I don't have to get too excited about getting every little branch in here because I'm going to put leaves on the trees. But it helps us to get some form if we can put some branches out there. And it helps us to know where our tree's growing. And we can also leave some of these branches in places so that it has more of a natural look. Okay, so once again, we're going to come with our round brush. Just going to wipe that off just a little bit. I need to make up a little bit more of my green and my yellow. Okay, so again I'm going to just tap into my tree, and if I really want to have fun I can pick up some both green and yellow at the same time, and I can get some of those highlights going at the same time as I'm putting on my green. Okay, so you can put in as many or a few branches and leaves as you want. Try not to make your tree just a, oops, there goes my sample. Try not to make your tree just a round ball, but give it some form. Okay, so then we're going to pick up some of that green. We're going to add that down here back at the bottom. And put a little bush right here in front of our tree. So we've just planted our tree back behind that bush. Okay. And again, we're going to tap on some highlights. And there you have it. In just a few minutes, we've created our own little spring masterpiece. So you can add as many or few details as you want in there, but that's a really simple way of making a really cute, fun little picture. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our second one that we did with the reds and the purples. And we're going to make that into a little seascape. And when I did the background, I left some of the pastels, the whites, to kind of be a part of our reflections in the water. But you can add as many or a few of those reflections as you want. So to do this, we're just going to pick up another little flat brush, and we're going to mix some of our blue with some of our red, and we're going to make our purple. And it just depends on the flavor of purple that you want, how much blue or red you put into them. If you go more with the reds, you're going to have more of the berry colors. If you go with the blues, it's going to go more towards the blue shadowy colors. I'm just kind of trying to get sort of a in-between purple there. And now we're just going to put on a little bit of the background. Put a little hill, mountain, foothill back here in the background. And you don't have to do anything major back here because it's pretty far back in the background. We're just wanting to give a little bit of interest in our background. And just bring that all the way down to where your sea begins. So now we just want to put our little sailboat in. You can put it on either side, but you just have to kind of pick out where you want to put that sailboat. And I'm again going to use that purple, and if you want to, make it a darker purple, you can add, more of your colors to make them whatever flavor of color you want there. This just gives it a little bit more interest than if you just throw a store-bought black out there. It's just going to give you more of an interesting flavor to your painting. So I just added a little bit of water with that so that it will flow a little bit better. And I'm going to put my little sailboat right over here. I'm just going to draw kind of a little triangle with my watered down paint and fill it in. And maybe have that a little too watery. I'll make it work. And now I'm going to add a second skinnier, we'll put our little mast up here. Make a second little skinnier triangle for a second sail. And fill that in. Now for the bottom of our sailboat, we're just going to give a little bit of a indication of kind of a straight line and then a little curve on both ends and fill that in. You really just have to think about your shapes being just that. I have an oblong that has a little curve on both ends. I have triangles. So you don't have to get too technical. This is a long ways out there. Can't really see all the details in that little sailboat. And just give that little mast down there. You may never see it, but we know we put it down there. Okay, so need to let that dry a little bit. It's a little thin through here. I may have to put a little bit more so that doesn't show. However, I am going to put a reflection on it. So I have to let that dry until I can put that reflection on it, because if I put it on here now, it would they'd mush together and it would become all muddy, and we don't want that. So we're going to go on and we're going to play in our reflections a little bit. Whatever we see in the sky is generally what we're going to see in our reflections in our water. Because it's pretty dark, the water itself is going to have, pretty much a very dark feel to it. But we can add in some of our yellows to give ourselves some feel of the reflection of the sky. So I'm just going to use my little flat brush and get very small little lines that I'm going to use as my reflections. And sometimes I tend to get too straight. I don't want them to be, so wiggly that it looks like it's a huge storm a-brewing. But I don't want them so straight that they just look like lines. So I try and give myself just a little wiggle to my lines, because nature doesn't like straight lines very well. And we're mostly going to see that yellow over here in this area because we have this darker mass over here. So I'm just going to put those sort of in that area. And I'll give a few of these lines down in here. Now I did put a little bit of white with that yellow, so it's not quite as bright as that is. Okay, so that gives me a little bit of that yellow. And rinse my brush off. And I'm going to come and put some orange highlights in as well. So I'm going to again go back into my red, go into my yellow to make an orange. And these oranges against the purple just really have a nice pop to them. Anytime that you use the colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel, you end up with beautiful colors. And they really make each other pop. So we'll just add a few of those oranges down in here. Got it a little bit too wet. I'll just add just a little bit more in. And we'll go down here underneath our boat. A few back here in the very back. So you can add as many or a few of these highlights as you want. And you can even come back with a few whites if you're wanting to pick up a few places where it's even brighter. My white has just a little bit of orange in it, but it gives us just that little bit of brightness where our sun's just shining through there. Okay, and I'm going to come back with a few of the darks. And go back over here into this purple. I've kind of used most of that up, so I'm going to make just a little bit more of my purple color. And we're going to give ourselves some shadowy ripples. Over here where the landmass is, we have a little bit more of the shadows. I'm going to give ourselves a little bit of that shadowy effect. And anytime that you have lights, it's nice to put the darks with them in some way so that you get the feel of that contrast between the light and the dark. This one just kind of looks like a little ripple in the water, and very often when you have a little ripple like that, you have dark because the water has kind of is folding up over that water, and you have some shadow. So putting in a few of these darks help. And right here underneath this boat, we're just going to add quite a few of these darks because we're going to have some shadow that's being cast by the boat itself. I'm not going to cover up all of those ripples completely. kind of give that feel of shadow. And water is one of those things that I could play with for a really long time, going back and forth between the lights and the darks, adding and subtracting and those kind of things. But I don't think you probably want to sit and watch me do my ripples all day. So now I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to give us a little bit of highlight on our sail. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of the white and mix down my orange so that it's kind of a lighter orange. And I'm going to come in here and just lay down a little bit of the reflected light here on our sail. And I'll do a little bit of reflected light right over here. And maybe our boat's picking up just a little bit of light on this outer edge. Okay, so that just gives us a really quick little study in our little sailboat. And so I hope that you have enjoyed this little lesson that I've had for you, and that if you didn't see the first part, you will go back and you will take a look at the first part, learn a little bit more about working with our primary colors and how we can change those into the other colors that we need to create the rest of our scene. And so hope you watch both parts, and if you paint one of these scenes, throw it out there in the comments so that we can see what you've been doing. We'll talk to you later, and we'll be back again soon with another episode of our Art from Home.